Gen Z and Millennials, what's something you wish the older generations understood? With exception to Latin, everything my dad studied as an honors student in the 60s I studied as a non-honors student in the 00s. He also didn't start writing multi-page essays, 7+ pages, until college. I started writing those in 8th grade. School was significantly easier back then because there was no expectation for most of the students. After graduation the majority of the boys joined the service, learned a trade and got a job. The majority of the women got married, had kids, and if they did work, it was something menial that required very little training. That's not the case anymore. Just general cost of living, especially for young families. I was at a baby shower yesterday and the mom mentioned that daycare she looked into near work was $3,000 a month. That's for an infant, so I know that's always more expensive, but, man, that means most of my paycheck would be going there. On top of that, it was a hustle to get where I am, graduating into the recession, and it's just now really paying off. Literally and figuratively. I need to save for retirement, so it's not like I can just stay home. Plus, what if there is a downturn, and my husband loses his job? His parents were totally fucked by the recession, plus cost is so high. Homes, cars, food, phones. Everything costs more. Our whole goal is having a mortgage we can pay off, stocking shelves at Trader Joe's if we have to. So, yeah. I think if I become a mom, I'll be solidly in my late 30s. Not ideal, but that's just how it's working out. Wish they talked more about this shit when reporting on falling fertility. Obviously, there are people choosing to forego, which even I debate now, but it's economic. If you are a regular person, working for a living, you pay through the nose. I have a boomer housemate that is so out of touch with how the world actually works these days. She will preach about how certain systems work, like education, finance and even property, because she apparently used to own a few. The problem is none of the info is relevant anymore, and she refuses to see that things are wildly different now even as they happen to her. We're in the middle of being evicted due to our landlord selling, and she just has no idea about how dehumanizing and difficult these things are. She's learning the hard way that things don't just magically work out. Anytime there is a new hurdle, she just throws a tantrum and expects someone else to do it or for it to magically go away. They don't want to see it because it largely invalidates basically their entire identity, that they were the best, that they made everything amazing, that they fought and worked hard and reaped the benefits. The reality is that's their fantasy, their dream of how it happened. It's reality, they were basically handed everything. Stable economy that only went up for a while. Tons of new industries and jobs. A housing market so stable. Not owning a home was considered weird, and not having at least a kid or two meant something was wrong with you. You can't put yourself through college by working at the supermarket anymore. Our generation is the biggest in US history, so competition for jobs is much harder than it was for boomers, which causes wages to flatline. Add to this that housing and food costs are at all-time highs, and it's pretty bleak for us. Even many of those who have good jobs at Fortune 500 companies cannot afford to purchase homes. I would really just like boomers for once just to acknowledge how difficult it is today versus when they were coming up. It's a different world and they just can't see it. It's very frustrating because most of them still think that anybody willing to swing a hammer 40 hours a week can make a living in America, and it's just not true anymore. That you can't just walk outside and get jobs stuck in your hair or on the soles of your shoes anymore. Also that minimum wage jobs will in no way allow you to earn enough money to get on the property ladder. If you do manage to land a job, you have to jump through a billion hoops, such as uploading a CV as well as filling in a form asking for the exact same information that's included in your CV. group assessments and all that carry on. It's not enough to just hand a CV over anymore and get an interview. Even if you know how to game the system, getting a job is bloody difficult. Maybe back in the 60s you could afford to support a family with a full-time job flipping burgers, but not anymore. Edit: I used blue collar instead of minimum wage. No idea why. I know better than that. Apologies. Yep, if I ask for a raise or more time off, I'm not being lazy or entitled. I just know that I could be making more money working somewhere else, and if you don't pay me the same or give me other concessions, I'm just going to go there. That's just a sound financial decision. Also, it's hard to feel loyalty to your employer when you know they're going to screw you over whenever they can. This. Also, we're not lazy, it's just that what was easy and a no-brainer for them is literally impossible for us. Working part-time through college and paying off tuition by graduation, buying a home at 20, finding a full-time, well-paying job and being rewarded for staying the next 40 years with a huge pension, none of it even exists anymore for the average millennial or Gen Z. Yup. Huge point. Also, a lot of things like job hunting simply have changed beyond what people like my parents really expected. For me, a degree wasn't enough and I needed work experience as well, and a LinkedIn profile, and to do a lot of research and practice, and take online tests. The list goes on. Once I explained all of that, they understood more about why it was kind of draining to find a job at times. You can hate your fucking job and be sad just because you think of the future. Once had a small talk with my parents. My job is draining and I can't see how it can get me to anywhere. My mental health deteriorated since university. Become a little bit negative and stop joking around like a clown during the conversation. The reply: I don't understand why you can hate your job so much unless you're slacking. Why would you choose to be sad instead of being happy? Thanks, Mom. Really helpful. My late great-aunt had an interesting take on this. She knew from experience that her house and the surrounding roads confused the shit out of anyone trying to follow a GPS because of how it was all laid out. So, when I asked her for her address to visit her one day, she said, "Okay, let me tell you the actual how to get here first because it's weird. Then I'll give you the address for your GPS." It was a good thing too, because I would have missed 3 turns and would have had to cycle back around otherwise. A 94-year-old figured this out. She also had an iPad and used it like a pro. Come on people, you're never too old to embrace technology. Stop telling me directions, I'll just use GPS. No really, just give me the address. Stop telling me directions, I'm not listening to you. Just give me the address and I'll use GPS. But they just keep going, and then at the third light, go left, go straight for about 3.5 miles, then make a right at the farmhouse. I got into an argument with my mom and her birth mother about this. My mom is always like, we survived, and I'm like, so many died though. Her birth mother was also like, and they built cars out of metal so they'd last too. And my husband was like, yeah, old cars are great and they last, but new cars are made to crush so that if you are hit it absorbs the impact, like talking to a brick wall. SMH. Yes. Find something big like a mountain or a big tower and know which direction it is versus a rough location. If you're in a properly designed grid city, walk 1 block, avenue number went up, you walked west, avenue number goes down, you walked east, street number went up, you walked north, etc. It doesn't matter how much I work, I busted my ass for my old boss for years. And when I decided to leave, he tried to tell me a story about how when he was my age he worked as much as I did and bought an apartment complex as a side hustle. I replied I would love to do that, and asked for a raise, to which he declined. Older generations love to spout how new generations hate to work. We don't hate to work, but we want to actually enjoy our fucking money. That we're not that lazy and we have a good reason to be depressed, cynical, and pessimistic. People like my grandma always talk how at your age I was married, had a house, and 2 kids blah blah, not realizing they did all that on one paycheck, while simultaneously complaining how money isn't worth anything nowadays and they just went grocery shopping and spent 25% of their income while chanting "don't worry, it's gonna get better." How the fuck can you not put those two together? I feel this one. I like reading and writing and therefore spend a lot of time on my laptop, not to mention reading news articles and Wikipedia pages about interesting topics. Of course I could read a physical book, or write with a notebook and pen, but on my laptop my spelling, grammar is checked immediately and I can look up facts/references/definitions with ease. I realize the concern comes from the idea of not being active, but if you aren't a total shut-in, it should be fine. It's not like I don't enjoy sports or go out at all lol. Kids use computers, phones for more than just playing video games and scrolling through social media. I basically live on my computer. My best friends are online. My favorite activities are coding and making games, but no. My parents assume the devil computer is rotting my brain and making me stupid. As a wise man once said, "Phone bad, book good." Definitely boomer. I'm in my 20s. Living with my boomer parents. My shift starts at 4 a.m. every morning. It's caused a rocky rift in my family because I have to be in bed by 6:30 p.m. every night or else I won't get enough sleep for work the next day. They don't understand why I need to go to bed early for an early morning shift. Even after many days where I've woke up and walked out the door for a shift and they are still awake from the day before. I fixed this when my parents started doing this. I was working a night shift job and got off at like 6 a.m. and they would call me to chat and then give me shit for sleeping till dinner. The argument of ... I don't just come home and immediately crash our most days ... I got shit to do after working everyone else and B. Do you walk up, get ready and go to work? Or do you wake up 7 hours early just for the hell of it? It finally stopped when I started calling them on my lunch break in the wee hours of the morning. "Oh, it's 3 a.m. Lol, why are you still sleeping? I have already been at work for 7 hours. Get up, you're wasting the day." Also, lots of millennial, Gen Z people had to work 60-hour weeks or more from the time they got to high school until they finished their college degrees. And often for a few years beyond that. It's really rude to call them lazy or entitled when they've finally made it to a stable 9-to-5 job that barely pays the bills after busting their ass for 15+ years. There's always a fear in offices that entire departments could be shut down by a single person who knows how to use Excel. Office work is ridiculously more efficient than it used to be thanks to computers. But executives didn't pay employees 10x as much for doing 10x as much work. They just fired 9 employees and pocketed the difference. TBH, it's her manager's fault for not providing a good solution or process to this. If they didn't care to train her in Excel, then it's their problem. Managers don't like wasting money and prefer that their employees do all their self-learning and somehow contribute to productivity and process improvement. You get what you pay for. Wow, look at that. It only took a minute. It's amazing what a computer can accomplish in an hour. Now that you've managed to shave it down to half a day, they'll find something to fill the other quarter of your day with, right? So many boomer, if it's only all that generation, but the label is effective here. Arguments and memes include raging at the generation they raised. It's crazy. I saw a stupid FB meme shared by a family member that said something cool like, "The got your ass beat generation produced better adults than the sat in timeout generation." Like, who do they think raised these apparently inferior adults? Millennials are grown-ass adults, literally the youngest conceivable cut point for millennials. Ability to candidly remember pre-9/11, at least for US in my opinion, is in the latter half of their mid-20s. The oldest possible cut point is in their early 40s. Millennials didn't kill industries. Complacency and a lack of forethought killed them. Taxi monopolies had a decade or more to make an app or whatever that was transparent about pricing, router and at least vastly more secure for riders than an anonymous pickup. We didn't kill Applebee's. The world is just more accessible now, and I'd rather eat something more interesting than frozen and microwave dishes I can make at least as well at home for 10% of the cost. Industries committed suicide because they thought being the best when we were 6 was going to be good enough. You gave us the fucking participation trophies, although I agree they're dumb. You were the snowflakes who couldn't let your precious little angel grapple with the fact that he won't be one of the like 500 NBA players one day. It is wholly unnecessary to spend 10 minutes giving me directions somewhere. Not to mention that if we do end up having kids, it's harder each year to afford them as daycare costs are increasing at a rate faster than normal inflation. In the past year my daycare costs have risen 9%, then 6%, then 3%. I only got a 3% raise at work and every penny goes to daycare, so I'm essentially earning less now than I did a year ago. I'm in my mid-60s. Those of us who don't have our heads in the sand can sympathize. I worked 3 jobs in college in a rigorous field of study and was exhausted for the entire 4 years. I wish I had gone to community college for my prerequisites, but back then many credits wouldn't transfer. Your generation has a tough road to hoe. Maybe trade school could be the way. Hugs, dear. The solution to your dilemma is way above my pay grade. How much college and housing really costs compared to when they bought those things, and it's just a domino effect. 2. The less reasonable college is, the harder it is to buy a house with all your loans, and both of those things make it very difficult to have children. The colleges saw that they were guaranteed the money, and the banks know they were guaranteed 90% of the money even if the student defaulted right as they graduated, so of course both loved it. The college figured out very quickly what the typical financial aid package was, so they raised tuition by that amount because they know you'll pay it for that piece of paper, which thanks to degree inflation is required for jobs that have no business asking for it. My dad and his 2 brothers, boomers, thought they were going to inherit my grandmother's house. They all have houses, land they've paid for. My grandma had a reverse mortgage when she passed away in April. They got nothing. I don't really feel bad for them. It's not like they are lacking at all. They each draw pensions. I don't even have a 401k. I was in the automotive industry in 2008 with the subcontractor to Saab. I was only 5 years out to uni. That recession wiped me out. Fast forward through the slow process of clearing debt and restoring credit. I was in the live event industry at the start of the pandemic. We're still not back and I'm pretty much wiped again. House, I rent a room. My first house will be inherited from my parents, no doubt. Yep. Take a look at the demographics. As boomers age and there are fewer people to buy the supply of existing houses. Me? I'm waiting for another bubble of sorts to reflect the change. Maybe not as dramatic as the countrywide mortgage collapse, but let's wait and see. We are already there. Buying a home is a way to build equity and ride the escalator toward a better home, larger home, newer home. Ironically, those conditions require that the first home might be something of a dive, the kind nobody wants to stay in. Seems nowadays even those starters are impossibly expensive. The only solution I have found involves moving farther away from family and friends to a place no one really wants to live, only to be able to afford the price. How old the oldest millennials actually are. Millennials cannot afford houses doesn't sound like a big deal if you only see millennials as people in their 20s. But the problem is that the oldest millennials are approaching 40 and they still can't afford a house. For example, at work my motto is work smarter, not harder. I've had older CO workers try to scold me when they hear this. then are shocked at the productivity my department is able to achieve. It's all about getting more knowledge into more people's hands. It makes everyone's lives easier. Just because I know how to find the answer to something doesn't mean I think I'm smarter than you. I'm just trying to save both of us from wasting time.